FSN Radio. It's all about what's next. Go to financialsurvivalnetwork.com and sign up for your free weekly newsletter. You'll also get 3 free reports. The Financial Survival Network. It's all about what's next.
Welcome, and you are listening to the Financial Survival Network. I'm Kerry Lutz. It's July 9th, 2018. Hard to believe more than half the year is gone. No great shocks to the system. The financial system is still standing after a year and a half of President Donald Trump. Almost a year and a half. Yeah, it's a year and a half. Wow, miracle of all miracles. Well, we haven't thought about this in a while, but first, as always, we urge you to be part of the show. Like I've told you many times in the past, you can make my day by sending me an email. I look at them first thing in the morning when I'm knocking back a cup of Java at a social justice warrior coffee shop near my house, and I'm not recommending it, but hey, if you're homeless, if you want to go do drugs, if you want to just go around and mooch off of their free internet service all day, they're open to it. They openly invite you to do so. That's not my thing. I'll just settle for a cup of coffee and reading your emails. Anyways, just the email address for future reference, kl@kerrylutz.com. So haven't thought about this in a long time. In fact, it's been 10 years. But we're going to check again because the Federal Reserve recently did a stress test of the largest banks. And the question is your money safe in too big to fail national bank? And the answers of the Fed's latest stress test might surprise you. And here to talk about it is our good friend, Brad Williams. Brad, welcome back to the show.
Well, good morning, Kerry. Glad to be here.
Hey, so the Fed did another stress test, and miracle of all miracle, and if you're not familiar with a stress test, they emulate the worst possible scenario, severe recession, similar to the one we had last time. And Brad, what did they find?
Well, they found the banks were in a lot better shape than they were before, at least in the first round. The second round of tests, they'll probably find, some further issues, but all in all, the system's in a lot better shape than it was. Although I kind of, I read a couple articles on it and I said, well, that'll free them up for more stock buybacks and dividends. Dividends are good, but, we've been propping up this market with stock buybacks for a while.
Yeah, very true. So true. So is the purpose of this thing just to enable them to do more buybacks or?
No, I think from a regulatory standpoint, they're doing their job. They're making sure that the banks can handle it. And with regulatory issues changing under this current president, I think we're going to find that local banks are going to be in a better position to serve their customers because they're not going to be regulated in the same way that the big national banks are. And that's good because, in reality, most of your local small business lending happens at the local bank, not at the big nationals.
Yeah, very true. And, when you look at what's happened with banking, well, a lot of changes have been made. We don't really know in the long run whether they'll prevent another 2008, 2009 pileup or insolvency, where the whole entire system basically became insolvent overnight, requiring a humongous federal bailout. And obviously there's reason to be hopeful, but a bank like Deutsche Bank, which is kind of teetering right now, how well did they come through it?
Well, no, that's a good question. I mean, these mega banks, and Deutsche Bank is definitely a mega bank. They trade in a lot of derivatives. I mean, that's what Deutsche Bank is known for. So, that's kind of derivatives are a normal part of business, but they're heavily into it. So, only time will tell, but at least by doing this, we're finding that some of the cracks that were there are not there now, or at least to the extent. And I think probably one of the biggest things that pushed the banking crisis before was, all these, this insurance that was being written, like on mortgages and, the credit default insurance, and that there's a more reasonable expectation for that. Whereas before it was like the Wild Wild West. They were making money hand over fist writing them, and they, you could put together a portfolio and sell it and say it's insured, and it wasn't near the shape it was supposed to be in, and that's really what was a big factor in the crisis.
Big factor, of course, and almost drove the system to the brink. And you have to wonder, though, like every lending cycle, the banks, their primary business model is to think of new ways that they can lose money, new ways to indebt the public, and new ways to require a federal bailout after they screw up. Do you really think it's different this time?
Well, you brought up some good points, Kerry, and I agree with you wholeheartedly. I just think some of the cracks that were there are not as big this time. But then again, you brought up a good point in every time the cycle comes in. Every time we have another cycle, we find cracks in different places. So it's an ongoing thing of where the weaknesses are.
Yeah. And, look, they've done this off balance sheet lending. That was big last time, doing it to SPCs, single purpose SPVs, single purpose vehicles like LLCs, right. And then they take the lending off their books, and nobody's any the wiser. With the big banks, Brad, isn't their accounting just as opaque as it's ever been?
Well, probably so, Kerry, because these regulators are looking at, it's kind of like generals fighting the past war. I'm a student of history.
Right.
And oftentimes when you enter into a war, the generals are fighting the last war, and they're not looking at this war. And that's probably the case we're seeing now. Is okay, this is what happened last time, let's fix it. Well, that may not be where the attack comes.
Mm-hmm. Very, very true. It's kind of like we're fighting the last one. We're worrying about mortgage-backed securities. That mess has kind of worked itself out because the real estate market has come roaring back, and the inventory has been worked off. And, with the exception of a few recalcitrant homeowners, most of that is gone. It's done. But there'll be something else, right?
I am concerned because I'm seeing more signs go up about 100% financing, and that bothers me. Agreed.
It's problematical, and it's a proven fact. And if we learn nothing from the last blow up, what we should have learned is that the more skin in the game borrowers have, the less likely they are to walk away, the less likely you are to walk away when the going gets bad. And yet the banks want to forget this lesson. Just proves what the man said. The only thing we learn from history is that we don't learn from history, right?
Yeah, that's a good point, because the history's proven it time and time again. You have those that are shouting from the wilderness, folks, we've been here before, and everybody says, no, things are different this time. And then all of a sudden, we're back where we were, and they're like, oh, well, he was pretty smart. Well, you didn't listen to it.
Yeah. I think my last ex-wife told me the same thing when we got married, but you know how that wound up. So we just don't want to learn. But what are some red flags that you will see, Brad, when these banks are starting to get in over their heads again, which they will? There's no question, because look, the one thing we didn't talk about is the fact that you have the Greenspan put, which means you can be as reckless as you want, but the bigger you are, and the worse it is if you fail, the greater the impact upon the financial system, the more likely it is you're going to get a bailout. Do you think that's changed even in the world of Dodd-Frank?
Well, probably not. I think mortgage lending has been a real factor, and it got real tight, and it totally changed the game. And now, as the real estate market has heated up in so many different places, we're now entering bubble territory, and the lending standards are loosening again. And that's to me the red flag. That's the big red flag, because so much of lending in this country is driven from the mortgage market. and so much of those are resold. And
Correct.
so that it's so pervasive all through pension funds and things like that, these mortgage-backed securities, because they produce income. And that's what pension funds are looking for.
Hey, and investors. So this time, though, they've absolutely promised that they're not going to be bad and that they're going to behave themselves. And also, look, you got the rating agencies, all right, corrupt to the core from the last go-around, but they seem to have changed their evil ways in a lot of respects because they don't want to get sued again. They're still fighting the lawsuits from back then. So the ratings of these bonds, which are still being issued, and for a long time, the government was the only taker. But now other investors have come back to the market like 2008, 2009 never happened, Brad.
Yeah. Well, and you're totally correct on that. So I think income is such a high need now because of the low interest rate that they're probably cutting corners where they shouldn't.
Mm-hmm. So you think they're cutting corners, but we're not seeing what we saw the last time, are we? It's not that reckless yet, but like you said, it could easily get that way, right?
That's right. And if we enter into recession, all that changes. When people can't pay their mortgages because cash flow is impeded, that's when you start really seeing the weaknesses. As long as job market's strong and we're now seeing wage rising, which is good because they've been depressed for so long, then the mortgage market should remain fairly strong. But when that changes, that's when you start having problems with delinquencies and things like that.
Yeah, no doubt. And they will go up. We're seeing it in subprime auto loans, right?
Yeah.
And that should be
and the big thing the big thing that we need to worry about now is this massive student loan debt.
Mm-hmm.
And at least when you got a mortgage or even an automobile, even though it's a depreciating asset, you got a hard asset to back it up. All you have is the earning power from these students to back up these student loans. Yeah. And that to me is probably where the focus ought to be, is how do we fix that? And one of the, that's a big thing. Yes, big thing.
And so, we see this. We see that lending standards declining, but on the other hand, the economy is doing a lot better than anybody had a right to expect, isn't it?
Yes, it is. And, a lot of that, if you really drill down in some of the regulatory issues and administrative issues that are going on from this president, he's actually doing a lot. I mean, he's getting a lot done. He's not getting a lot of credit for it because they're going after other things to weaken him. But there's a lot being done. I know in my industry, financial services, it was not looking good 2.5, 3 years ago with this Department of Labor rule and all the regulatory oversight and overreach that was going on. And now that's being backed up. So what concerns me is, when I'm reading these articles about the banks and their stress tests, the resounding theme I kept hearing, well, it'll give them more money for stock buybacks. Well, that can be good. Yes, it helps shareholders, but it also it's just a way for CEOs to move money around to enhance their income. And don't get me wrong, I don't mind that. But sometimes you get this false feeling that the market's continuing to rise because of foundational improvements in the economy, and it's just moving money around. It's just moving paper around.
Yeah. Yep. It's so true. And, that's what a lot of the financial sector is just moving. It's one algorithm moving money from one place and then another algorithm bringing it back and making a round trip, not adding any economic value whatsoever. And yet they manage to turn a profit. And I don't get it. How long can that game go on for?
That's right.
Yeah. So anyway, as far as the Trump economy, though, for now, at least until Election Day, there's no way the economy is going bad in the next 5 months. This economy really is definitely a plus for the president and the election, isn't it?
Yes, it is. And, regardless of the short-term effects of the tariff discussions and the trade wars, the fact of the matter is for the last 20, 30 years, we've made bad trade agreements. And at least we finally got a president who's going to put his rear end on the line and start reversing that. And I liked what he said when he was meeting. He says, it's not you guys' fault. It's our fault. We're bad negotiators. Yeah. And so often our negotiators have gone to the table just wanting to bring home a deal. And the other guys know that. So they just hold out to the last minute, give them a few crumbs, and then they get to come back and claim victory in our time, Sure. And it's just not worked for the American worker. And with the immigration issue, you just don't bring in that many workers and not cause wage depression.
Yeah.
I mean, it just doesn't happen. It's supply and demand. So we are a nation of immigrants, but they need to come in the front door. Agreed. And then we can control them better.
Agreed, for sure. And these are really important issues. President has addressed them like no one else in his party or any other party before him. And does that surprise you that he's actually following through and actually takes campaign promises seriously? I mean, I know it surprises me.
Well, it doesn't when I really look at him as a man and what he gets done, because he understands business. You don't make money in the hotel and the real estate market in New York without understanding the basic factors of, you're dealing with local corrupt politicians, You're dealing with unions, and you're dealing with a mob. Okay, what better person to send to Washington than somebody who has all experience dealing with those three factors? And he understands business and he understands how important that is. But another thing that's important is he's got a really thick skin, and we're past politicians, whether they're presidents or congressmen or senators. He retaliates when you attack him. He doesn't back into a corner and say, sorry, I won't say that again. He doubles down. And the press doesn't know how to deal with that because they're used to kowtowing Republican politicians for so long. And now they got somebody that fights back pretty fiercely.
Yeah. If you remember George Allen, he was the senator from Virginia, and he was the front runner, I think, about 3 election cycles ago. And
right.
He was at a rally and somebody said something that wasn't true, and he said macaca. And then the Washington Post and all the papers turned that into a racial slur, which it wasn't. It was just a way of saying BS. And he wound up for weeks, he was apologizing for saying macaca. Now, if that is so offensive, can you imagine what else the guy would have been apologizing for? And the problem is when you apologize, it makes you look weak. And and
it tells them that they've got the upper hand.
Yeah, and Trump, he said he apologized over the weekend. He was talking about Elizabeth Warren, and he apologized to the real Pocahontas for comparing her to the fake Indian Elizabeth Warren. So that's
Pocahontas.
Yeah, Pocahontas or Liawatha or whatever they call her. She has 1,000 nicknames and she's toast. And, nobody else, that's why I say nobody else could have beaten Hillary Clinton because nobody else would have said the things that he did that needed to be said. I mean, that was the amazing thing. And people want a leader, but they don't just want a leader. They want a strong leader. And that's why he got where he was. Hey, it's all really interesting. I'm just curious what's going to happen for the next recession. It's going to come. My guess is it's not coming for a while because in spite of the media, Brad, let's face it, we haven't had a recovery up until Trump came into office. The economy was sputtering. So,
that's right. And whatever growth it did have was on free money.
Yeah. Financial engineering.
Printing press is just pumping it into the economy.
Hey, we got 300,000 plus more manufacturing jobs from the time Trump entered office. I mean, those jobs were gone. They were never coming back. We got all these coal miners, whether they like, mining for coal or not, and black lung and all the awful things that come with it, but they're making a living and they're making a good living at it. And Where was Obama for all these jobs? He was busy killing off jobs in various sectors.
And you're exactly right. And where Trump stands tall is he wants to, whatever people think of MAGA, make America great again. He has the attitude of let's make America great again. There were a lot of Obama people in the upper parts of his cabinet early on where their attitude and were quoted in more than one instance of we're here to manage the decline. Okay. Well, Americans don't want to hear they need a managed decline because they're going down. They want somebody to say, hey, we're going to win.
Yeah.
You know, what kind of coach comes in and says, hey, we're going to lose, but just not lose so fast this game?
Yeah, not by so many touchdowns, right?
That's right.
We're going to make it close, but we're still going to lose. Yeah, like who needs that?
Right.
It's so true. And the whole attitude of the country, the inner country, the people who don't suffer from Trump derangement syndrome, I think there's still at least 10 or 20 in the country. You know, those people are, their economy's going like gangbusters, and even Wall Street. So today, great day on Wall Street, looking at a couple 100 points up on the Dow, and probably, my feeling is I felt the stock market was going to be in a sideways trend for a number of months. It probably has a good chance of breaking out after the summer, sell in May and go away, right?
Right.
Yeah. Facebook going to new highs. And, you see it over and over again. Lots of different companies are really on the up. Industrial hiring, all these things that the naysayers said couldn't be done. And I'll admit to being one of those naysayers. I didn't think he could do it. Really didn't. But he did it. He's done it, and he's doing it. So got to give him credit for that. Anyway, Brad, want to find out more about you, connect with you on the web. Where's the best place to go?
Well, I always tell people if you got a financial question, just ask Brad Williams, and that's askbradwilliams.com.
Well, that makes life easy. AskBradWilliams.com. We'll have a link to your site in the show notes to this interview on Financial Survival Network. Don't forget, shoot those emails out to me. I will make sure that they're read in a social justice warrior-friendly environment. Unfortunately, I don't have much choice. We don't have that rifle, whatever it's called, coffee, rifleman coffee here where I live. And if, you want to connect on Twitter, it's at Kerry Lutz. The Facebook page, Financial Survival Network. Don't forget, sign up for the newsletter. Just sent one out yesterday. If you want me to send it to you, just email me, kl@kerrylutz.com. It's called Make Border Security Great Again, Privatize It. And we'll leave it at that. Brad, always great to talk to you. Be well.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
FSN Radio. It's all about what's next. Go to financialsurvivalnetwork.com and sign up for your free weekly newsletter. You'll also get 3 free reports. The Financial Survival Network. It's all about what's next.